Phase 3 of Malaysia's e-invoice system rollout kicks off on Tuesday, targeting taxpayers with annual revenue between 5 million and 25 million ringgit. Inland Revenue Board IRB Deputy Chief Executive Officer Tax Operations Shaharudi Othman said approximately 55,000 taxpayers are expected to be onboarded in this phase and expressed confidence that the take-up rate would mirror previous phases. The fourth and fifth phases of the rollout will target businesses with annual income between 1 million ringgit and 5 million ringgit starting 1st January 2026 and those earning up to 1 million ringgit beginning July 1st, 2026. And for that, I welcome you. Our guest ready on the set is Havidin C, the SCS Global and Council member of Tax Institute. I want to say thank you very much, Havinda, for joining us again. The last time you came to the studio, we were talking about the SSC amendment and the expansion. And now we're going to add more discussion within the tax system. It's e-invoice. And we're at the phase 3. Phase 3 brings in business with 500K to 25 million ringgit turnover. Probably before we discuss long, what's the real goal behind the phase 3?
Once again, first of all, Nina, thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here. And phase 3 basically is for taxpayers with turnover of 5 million to 25 million. And so we're in the middle of this 5 phases of the implementation. And the idea here is to basically, first of all, initially there were supposed to be 3 phases. They've been expanded to 4, then subsequently now to 5. It's essentially to give taxpayers more time to be e-invoice savvy and to be able to implement e-invoicing more efficiently. So what it means for this phase 3 taxpayers actually is that also bearing in mind that e-invoicing has its own complexities and it takes time to get the systems in place. There's a lot of relaxation that actually has been given by the government. What it means essentially is for the next 6 months, this category of taxpayers can continue to actually carry on business as usual. They can issue the normal invoices. You don't have to have an e-invoice in place. But at the end of every month, within 7 days from the end of the month, you have to do a consolidated e-invoice, which means all these normal invoices that you sent out, you will list them, the amount and the invoice number. It's just one consolidated e-invoice to be submitted to the IRB. So that makes life a lot easier. Because if you talk about individual e-invoices, you need to have the details of the customer. There are normally 6 unique details that you need to know. The name, the tax number, the ID, the address, the email address, the telephone number. And it takes time to gather all this sort of information.
Yeah.
So with the consolidated invoice, you don't need any such details. It is just putting the details of your invoice number, the normal invoice that you sent out, and the amount, and that's consolidated and submitted to the IRB. So these 6 months basically are to enable taxpayers to, don't sit on their laurels, start getting e-invoice ready. E-invoicing is here to stay. It's not going to go away. It's not going to magically disappear because it's very important. For the government, e-invoicing is a tool to increase compliance, to increase the collections. And it is hoped that perhaps by the time e-invoicing is implemented in full, we will have a 30%, 40% increase in the tax collections. That's the main driver, of course, behind e-invoicing as well.
Will the grace period will help or hurt? Because we understand that July to December 2025 election period gives business more time. But do you believe it's actually helped them prepare or just delay the inevitable rush, actually?
Well, I think at the end of the day, like I said, e-invoicing is here to fully be, it's going to be implemented. There are repercussions if you do not comply. For the supplier, the businessman or the party that's carrying on the business, it's a requirement under the law to issue an e-invoice. Otherwise, you could face a fine of between 200 ringgit to 20,000 for each e-invoice that's missing. So it's down, we're in the self-assessment system, it's always down to the taxpayer. It's the responsibility, the onus of proof and responsibility is on the taxpayer to ensure that the requirements are met. Of course, it can be a challenge to implement invoicing. You need to train your staff. You need to have the systems in place, which, by the way, are becoming increasingly affordable. It's not going to cost you an arm or a leg, so to speak. So it is not, to me, I feel, it is not something that you can just try to escape from by having this escapism. You need to face the reality, and we need to actually look at how to implement it. So if you delay it, if you wait for the last minute, and you hope that maybe there's another postponement from the government, which may or may not happen, because eventually the idea is to have it implemented in full. And I think however long it takes, even if it means that there has to be some further postponement or refinement of this, eventually we will get there. So I feel the 6-month relaxation period is very useful. The phase 3 taxpayers know that they are now on board, and at the very least they have to do the consolidated e-invoice. So you might as well learn how your actual e-invoicing will take place as well. And if I may just add, if you are basically dealing with consumers, business to consumer transactions, if you are a restaurant operator, if you are a supermarket, if you are a clinic, you don't actually have to issue an e-invoice for each transaction. You can still carry on business as usual, and then you do the consolidated e-invoice at the end of the day. So it is not as, I think, as tedious or as complex as some may perceive. But when you're transacting with another business to business, then e-invoicing has to be done on an individual basis. An individual e-invoice is required for every transaction. So the impact of this may not be all that significant on most parties. I think what's really important and what I'm glad about is that the government or the IRB has actually given this relaxation to enable taxpayers to be prepared to learn the ropes and try to be e-invoice savvy as quickly as possible.
You have to be tech savvy for this, upgrade your skill as well.
That's right.
We understand that, as you mentioned, that probably one of the basic necessity requirement for us to registration for invoice, we need to have basic ID, numbers, address, and number of receipt. And then, but maybe you can share with us some of the businesses industry, probably the small players, doesn't understand fully the procedure. Probably they say when the announcement of few phases of e-invoice, okay, now we have to go to class, training programs, and now we have to provide this, but they don't know the correct order of this. Maybe you can share with us, we know they have guidelines, a few pages to explain it, but maybe can simplify for us the easy step for them to start, so we understand maybe some of it can become overwhelming during this process execution, but maybe you can share with us what are the correct guidelines or steps they should start taking from taking classes to providing all the requirement documents until the end of the deadline.
Okay, I think in a way we are at that phase or that stage now where firstly we talk about the systems that are out there that can be implemented. They are very friendly and very easy to use systems. I'll just give you an example. If you go to Starbucks and you want to buy a drink, they will issue a normal receipt to you because Starbucks has already started implementing e-invoicing. But being a business to consumer transaction, they don't issue an e-invoice to you. They give you the normal receipt, but at the bottom there's a link which basically links you to their, you go into that link, it links you to their website. So the purchaser, if requires an e-invoice, you want an e-invoice for yourself, you can go in and key in those 6 details. Okay. Right? And submit, enter, it goes into Starbucks system. Starbucks system is linked to IRB's portal. The e-invoice is validated and you have it. It will be emailed to you, etc. Now that same system can be tweaked and has been tweaked by the providers, the software providers and this systems providers, to be used in the kedai nasi ayam or whatever as well. So you go there and you will be given a tablet. If it's point of sales kind of transaction, you press, so the operator presses nasi ayam for 5 ringgit or whatever. It goes into the system, it gets linked to the IRB's portal, and you have an invoice basically given on the spot. And these systems can actually be, purchased or subscribed for on a monthly basis for very affordable prices, 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit, depending on the requirements of the party. So to me, I think what's important to share, firstly, is that there are such systems available. Basically, the awareness of that is not really out there. It is not going to, like I said, cost you an arm and a leg to basically implement e-invoicing. If we talk about the starting step for e-invoicing, very quickly just to go back one step, an e-invoice essentially is, from the technical perspective, it is, what do you call it, a representation, digital representation of the transaction. If I'm selling my services to you, I will put in our details, I will put in your name, my name, and relevant details, the amounts, and submit it to the IRB's portal for validation. For that, I can actually use IRB's My Invoice portal as well, which is provided free of charge. So it is there, the facility is there, and it's quite robust now. Initially, there were teething problems, but it's there for everybody to use as a facility. And once I've submitted, that e-invoice will be, once validated by the IRB, you and I will both be notified about the validation. And I can then share that e-invoice to you to say that, Nina, you owe me this money, can you please pay? I can give you a visual representation of that. And you can either reject it or accept it. You got 72 hours to reject that e-invoice. And all these things are actually part of the system of every e-invoice transaction that's carried out. And I suppose the understanding of that, the awareness of that can be shared with the employees, with the people that are going to implement e-invoicing. That the entire system, basically what it entails, the processes that are entailed. So once the e-invoice, you don't reject it, you accept it, I have not overbilled you, for example, it will be in the IRB's portal for the next 10 years, right? It's there to stay. And so actually it is, the whole idea behind this, firstly, is for the IRB, for the tax authorities to be privy to the transaction, to know that I have done such a sale. They can monitor me, eventually to see whether I've reported that, I've paid taxes on that income. Those are some of the things that are there. But this entire process of validation, creation, etc., is simplified in those instances, like I said.
What's some of the common mistake usually for taxpayer? We know common mistake they typically do within final preparation for this.
Well, the first mistake is to firstly assume that, perhaps this can be done at the last minute. Right? That shouldn't be the case. That's been the challenge, I think, for us as the consultants to many of the SMEs, right? They take this wait-and-see attitude. But like I said, it's not going to go away. There's been a bit of a deferment, but it's eventually going to come in. So we need to emphasize on the need to be prepared as quickly as possible. The other issue is perhaps not understanding exactly what the requirements are. For example, if you are a manufacturer, a small manufacturer as well, and you're going to import materials from overseas, in the past you would just do the customs clearance, you have an invoice coming in from overseas, you make that payment. Right now there's a requirement for this manufacturer to basically issue a self-billed e-invoice within 2 months from the end of the month in which the customs clearance is obtained. So you got things like understanding the requirement for e-invoicing and then self-billed e-invoices. The differences between the two need to be understood. You need to know the deadlines for the various types of e-invoices to be issued. So mistakes will be along the lines of not understanding, not knowing, not doing a proper gap analysis between your current systems, what they are and what they should be. And if I may just add on one more thing,
Really?
To assume that the current system of the invoicing that we do, right? For example, if I were to sell my goods to you or provide my services to you, currently I will invoice when the services have been rendered or the goods have been delivered. Right? If I receive any advance payments, it will be recorded as a prepayment for accounting purposes. With e-invoicing, that advance payment requires an e-invoice to be issued separately.
I
Right? So
understand.
it's an additional transaction which requires.
Probably my last question, we have only less than 1 minute.
Okay.
What's next after e-invoice? Do you see e-invoice eventually link up to SST, like transfer pricing, and then even BEPS reporting? Should the taxpayer be preparing for that now? Less than 1 minute, sorry.
Yeah. E-invoicing actually, basically, well, it's a unified invoicing system.
SST.
It will allow for, digitalized financial reporting. It will, it's actually, e-invoicing requirements also have all this data for customs, which can be used for, indirect tax purposes, SST, sales tax, import duty purposes. In terms of related party transactions, it can also be, the data can be massaged to look at, the requirements for transfer pricing. So eventually, if there's a need to implement GST as well, the invoicing platform, it can accommodate GST as well. Right? Because it's, after all, an issue of putting in a transactional tax, right, for every transaction that takes place.
I want to say thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are at the end of the session. Definitely, I will invite you more again to fully understand all the system within the e-invoice SST. Again, I want to say thank you very much to Habib Nasir, the SCS Global and Council member of Tax Institute, and definitely all of our discussion here will be featured in astro.com across all social media. See you again, Habib.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.